Hey guys, welcome to another video, and today we'll talk about the fastest way to become a web developer in 2021. Before we do so, let me quickly tell you a little bit about myself. I am a software engineer and application architect at IBM. I'm also the CEO of MZ Tech. Okay, so if you want to know a little bit about what MZ Tech is, just go to mztech.us. You'll be able to see all the details. So without wasting any more time, let's actually talk about the topics of today, which is web development, or how, if you were to do so, or if I had to start it all over again, how would I do so, right? So before we could even talk about what do you have to do, you have to actually know the types of web developers that are out there. Essentially three kinds. One is front end, one is back end, another one is full stack. Okay, so front end developer, or if you want to be considered as a front end developer, you have to know there are certain technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So any sort of website that you visit, anything you're seeing visually is basically done by a front-end developer. Okay, so if that fascinates you, this sort of technologies that are out here, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, framework, such as React, Angular, Vue, all of these technologies you really have to know them. And what a backend developer does is basically handles the data layer or the interaction that really happens from a front end to the database, and it's essentially done by a backend developer. Again, backend is a data layer. There are APIs that you create, and there are a bunch of actions or functionalities that you could create, and that's what CRUD is for. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete, and all of these are basically HTTP endpoints that you could hit, and again, in future videos I'm going to talk about what they are in details, but some of the languages that you could use to write backend codes are in JavaScript, Python, Java, C#, PHP. Examples of a database could be SQL. There are two types of database. There's SQL and NoSQL database. SQL basically is a structural query language. That's what it stands for, and it's basically stores, as the name suggests, stores the data in certain structure. Where NoSQL database basically doesn't have any sort of structure. An example of a SQL database would be MySQL. Example of NoSQL database would be MongoDB. So if you want to become a front end or back end, this would be your tool stack rather, right? And if to be considered a full stack engineer or a developer, actually it's you have to know both of these, right? So you need to know back end and front end. Let's actually move on to my preferred tool stack and what I use from a day-to-day point of view. For front end, I use this technology, so React, Redux, Bootstrap, Material UI, CSS, Sass, BEM. So just to go a little bit about them, right? React, it's again for JavaScript framework to handle the front end. Redux is for state management. Bootstrap and Material UI, these are just CSS frameworks that you could use that helps you style or design your website. And then there's backend. For backend, I use Node.js. Again, this is the name suggests it's actually written in JavaScript. That's why it's Node.js. Okay, and there is a framework that I use from a backend point of view. That's Express. So this again, the functionalities or the CRUD system that I was talking about, Express actually helps you write them in a way that integrates with Node.js. So any sort of GET request, any sort of POST request, all of those endpoints actually you could write with Express. Okay, for data storage, I use MongoDB, and I've used Firebase as well. The architecture that I use, it's called three-tier architecture. There are three different layers essentially. One is the client representation layer, as we talked about, and this in the front end. And we use React and Redux. For backend, I use Node.js and Express. The server or application layer is basically the layer that talks to the database and to the client. And for the database, I use MongoDB, and again, which is a non-SQL database, NoSQL database. That means it doesn't have any structure when it stores the data. And then I also use Firebase as well for storing. And again, Firebase was created by Google. For authentication as well, I use Firebase. I use JWT. So these are the current tool stack that I'm currently using. Again, there are quite a lot out there, and I'll make a video on why I use these technologies. I do want to keep this video as short as possible. With that being said, I do want to thank you all for watching the video. And again, if you have any questions or suggestions, do let me know. You could reach out to me or you could leave your comments. All right? Thanks, guys.